Oh, hi there, friends. So, I was on Instagram yesterday asking people what they would like to know more about when it comes to design. And one of the first things that came up was people wanting to know how to create a feature wall with wallpaper. And as wallpaper is one of my very favorite things, I jumped on the opportunity to do this. So here in this video, I'm going to be offering you a few ideas and tips and just general know-how for how to create that perfect feature wall in your home. So number one on the list is to pick a focal point. Now, the beautiful thing about wallpaper, I think, well, there are lots of beautiful things about wallpaper, but one of my favorite things about wallpaper is that these days, it can really be used as art. Like in our grandparents' era, you know, there would be these full room wraps, full house wraps in wallpaper. And it's really used differently these days. We can really use it more as, I like to think about it, using it like art. And so really it's about creating this beautiful focal point for your room and for your space. And that can be done in so many different ways. So, you know, feature walls are a big way that people are doing this. And generally speaking, that's just picking one wall in a space that you want to highlight, right? So if you're working with a dining room, that could be, you know, the room that sort of frames your dining set. If you're working with a bathroom, it might be the wall behind your sink. If you're working with a bedroom, oftentimes, right, it's the wall behind the bed so that when you walk in, you see this beautiful picture. But there are lots of different ways that we can make wallpaper the focal point. So yes, obviously feature walls are one of them, but there are a lot of, you know, really interesting creative ways that we can use wallpaper that doesn't involve doing a whole room. So you could consider putting wallpaper in the back of a shelving unit or a cabinet. You can put wallpaper on the ceiling. You can put wallpaper on a bulkhead. Ooh, I love bulkheads. Interesting lines in a space. If you have interesting angles for where your wall meets your ceiling, if you had bulkheads, you can wallpaper the bulkhead and leave the wall, or you can wallpaper the wall and leave the bulkhead. You know, just getting really creative with how you can use it. I mean, there's so many interesting ways of using wallpaper, and I think these days, you know, it also helps people with their budget sometimes to get creative and to think outside of the box when it comes to wallpaper, because you might not have the budget to be using like 3, 4, 7, 8 rolls. So you can think to yourself, okay, if I had 1 or 2 rolls of wallpaper, what sort of fun could I create in this space? And so just bringing it back to the whole point of the focal point, really you want to sort of stand back and say, okay, where would I really love to have some art? Where would I love to have some feeling? Where would I love to have some energy in this space? Because at the end of the day, you know, I always say in design, yes, it's about creating beautiful spaces, but it's way more so, well, at least equally so, about making sure that we're creating an experience in the space. And so getting clear on that experience is really important. And so one of the ways that you can sort of play around with where you might like this focal point to be is just to print off a piece of paper that has the wallpaper you're thinking about using, and just sort of like tacking it up on the wall or taping it up on the wall in these different places, and just sort of getting an idea for the sort of feeling it captures. Because depending on where the light is in your space, depending on where all sorts of things are in the space, you know, wallpaper is going to read very differently. You also want to think not just about the light in a space in terms of the color or the lightness and darkness of a room, but also the reflection of wallpaper. So do you want to see a reflection on the wallpaper? Because, you know, light is a really beautiful thing and it can sort of like play with your design. So the idea of sort of pinning up this piece of either a sample of the wallpaper itself or just like a printout of what the print looks like on the walls will just sort of like give you an idea of where you might like the focal point to be. So number 2 is framing the space. So I love this idea because if we sort of go, or we keep going with the idea of wallpaper as art, I really love to sort of always think when I'm designing about having wallpaper almost be the frame for our piece of art. So if I give you an example, so when we look at something, if there's a dining room and I'm doing the rectangular wall behind it, right? I want to think of the pieces of furniture that are going to be in front of it, and sort of what the overall experience of that space will be with the wallpaper framing that. So it sort of gives us an idea of how to integrate the wallpaper, because we don't just want to put wallpaper up on the wall. We want to put wallpaper up on the wall to, like, again, create that beautiful picture, to create that experience. And so just asking ourselves, you know, how can I use my wallpaper to create this beautiful picture that is this room? I just find it's a really sort of creative way for us to explore a little more the overall picture and experience that is your room. Instead of just saying, you know, oh, I want this to be trendy, or I want this to be modern. It's like, I want this to be peaceful, I want this to be playful, I want this to be fun, I want this to be, you know, whatever. And so I think playing with the idea of the frame just gets our mind going about really creating that full picture, instead of just throwing wallpaper on a wall and calling it a day. Although throwing wallpaper on any wall is always still good. Okay, number 3, chicken versus the egg. To me, this means that there are 2 different ways that you can use wallpaper in a space. Number 1 is that if you are completely redesigning a space, you can go out and you can just go crazy and get inspired with wallpaper and make the wallpaper the inspiration for all of the other choices you make in the space. So you literally just have carte blanche to go out and be like, oh my God, I'm obsessed with this wallpaper. Pick, you know, 3 or 5 or 500, because there's so many amazing wallpapers out there, but sort of make a short list of the wallpapers that you're like, oh my God, I am obsessed with this wallpaper. And then get samples for each of them and pare your decision down. And then once you have that wallpaper, then you can go about creating the space around that with furniture, with textiles, with rugs, with, you know, everything. So you can use the wallpaper as the inspiration for the whole space. On the other hand, you may be looking to add some life and some fun and just some, you know, visual interest with wallpaper, but maybe you already have all the furnishings in the space. Maybe you already have most of the other items that will be in that space. So then you can sit back and you can look at and just like make a list of all of the items in the space, or even just like sit back and look at them and sort of just get curious about what you already have in terms of color palettes, in terms of style, in terms of era, in terms of the overall feel that's in the space right now. Just like sit back and do a mental inventory about what's there. And then you can go out from there and just maybe even just pick a couple different directions to explore. So if there's a color palette you're already working with, then you can go out and say, okay, number 1, I'm going to explore some wallpapers that are in this color palette, or that are in a complementary color palette. So maybe the color palette is different, but it has little hints of what you already have in there. So you can sort of go, one direction you can take is exploring color. The other direction you can take is maybe exploring an era or a theme. So if you want, if you love forests and you want to say, okay, I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna find a whole bunch of different forest themed wallpapers to go in my space that has all this beautiful wood of different styles, then you can go out and even within that small sort of like forest theme, you could find 10, 100, 200 different options that could all work well. So you could go by color, you can go by theme, Or you can really just go out. I mean, like I said in the first option, if you're sort of just going out and getting inspired by wallpaper, you can still do that even if you have the furnishings. You just might be a little more limited in terms of like being able to work with every wallpaper. But you can still just go out and look online and see what works and get the samples and sort of work with anything. I mean, the really beautiful thing about design is that it really isn't just doing about what's on trend or what's beautiful or creating, you know, a nice looking space for yourself and others to walk into. It really is just about creating a space that you love, that you're gonna feel amazing in, that your family's gonna feel amazing in, that you're gonna feel just awesome being surrounded by. And I don't ever want people to lose sight of that, because you can really make anything work. There are no right and wrong decisions when it comes to design. What you're drawn to, you know, is gonna be different from what someone else is drawn to. I mean, I always love making design a big mishmash of colors and styles and eras, and it's like we are. It's this beautiful tapestry of all of these different things. And it could come together beautifully. So don't limit yourself by what you see other people doing, or, you know, if you have a very traditional dining room set and you want to go with a really contemporary, bold design or a geometric design, you know, don't limit yourself. Just get a sample, or again, print off that piece of paper, post it on the wall, and just see how it feels. That is the ultimate way to make decisions when it comes to design, is just to see how it feels. Don't make any decisions about what's right and wrong until you look at those things in the space and you get that feeling, that like, yes, I love this feeling. Or it's like, meh, you know, give it or take it. Because there are a bajillion wallpapers out there. And so have fun, and don't, like, there are no rules. There is no box. Number 4. Get your wallpaper installed. So as an interior designer, I'm a really big proponent of this for a number of reasons. One of the big reasons, so I'll tell you basically 2 main reasons. So number 1, the biggest reason I would say for getting wallpaper professionally installed is that you want it to look beautiful. You're making an investment, you know, and like any investment, you want to make sure that you're going to be happy with the end product. And so wallpaper installation is about a number of things. Number 1, precision of installation. So if you're not working with just like a rectangle and you have, you know, moldings around doors, frames around doors, moldings around windows, you have angles, you have just interesting spaces, you have little small panels, you know, it's really worth making sure that it's gonna look beautiful when you're done. Because people, I mean, tons of people, don't get me wrong, tons of people install their own wallpaper, but it is a lot easier to do that when you have just a plain shape. And the other really great reason that I always tell people to get their wallpaper installed is for longevity and also for ease of removal. So in terms of longevity, if you're installing wallpaper, for example, in a kitchen, in a bathroom, you really want to make sure that those walls are primed and prepped and flat, and that all of the right products are being used. And so like wallpaper installers, for example, they will sand the walls down. They'll use a product called a wall size, which makes sure that the walls are creating an environment where the wallpaper can really adhere. And they're using professional glues, and they're making sure that pressure is applied evenly and properly, and that the seams line up, and all of these things that like the average person wouldn't necessarily think to do. And so getting it professionally installed makes sure that you're not gonna have peeling, you know, a year or 2 years in, that you're not gonna have bubbling, that you're not gonna have funky seams. And it also ensures that if and when you want to get it removed, whether you're going to sell your house in a few years, or whether you think you might want another wallpaper in a few years, which is more like my life, then getting it professionally installed, make sure that that it can be easily taken down and removed if you should ever want to do that. So I know it's an investment, but it's well worth the investment to make sure that you are going to be happy now and in the long run. So that's about it, friends, for now. I hope this was helpful. If you have any questions about this video or more questions about wallpaper, I am always here. It's my favorite thing ever. So yeah, sending you health and happiness and light and love and all things wonderful. Stay positive, stay safe, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye, sweet friends.